I cheers you, sir.
Thank you.
One of my very good friends within Carry the Load, and we welcome everybody to Lessons from the Front. We are live here in, what is this, day 8 of Carry the Load's virtual relay. And man, I'm telling you what, it's just this has been an interesting year, David. Last year this time you were on the East Coast relay, and or the West Coast relay. But this year you were supposed to go to the East Coast.
Yes.
In which case you would have been in Virginia, because that's where the virtual relay is. And for folks who haven't experienced Carry the Load before, we're gonna talk to our good friend David Lindsay here in just a minute. But what we do is we start a relay every year, and just think in terms of a river, a tributary of rivers that start at the in the west in Seattle, and the East Coast at West Point, the Midwest in Minnesota, and then the Mountain States this year is new, and that starts in Minot, North Dakota. If we were on the actual relay this year, folks, we'd be going through Virginia Beach today. That's where our good friend David Lindsay would be. And as a result of that, we are honoring today Bill Mulder, who died a couple of years ago. And he was a Navy SEAL, and lots of good friends of our organization knew him. So we want to make sure that we are stopping to pay him honor today. Specialist Joseph Lancour was our honoree today on the Midwest relay, as that would be going through Michigan. 21 years old, David. Way too soon.
Way too soon.
To see these young men and women go. He was killed in action on 10 November 2007. And then the West Coast relay would be going through San Diego today, May the 6th. And that's Lieutenant Commander Eric Christensen. He was also a Navy SEAL. He was killed in action June 28, 2005. 33 is still way too young. So we want to make sure that we are remembering those folks today if you are tuning in, and encourage other folks to go to carrytheload.org to do the same thing. So that being said, I'm going to put this off to the side. And today we get to talk to David Lindsay. And David is a retired firefighter out of Dallas, Texas. He's also a big part of the Lieutenant Todd Krodle Foundation, which has been a great partner of Carry the Loads for quite some time. So David, what I want to do first is I want to get to know you a little bit, give everybody a little context. Who is David Lindsay?
Oh, geez. I grew up in a small town just outside of Dallas, Terrell, which we're about 20 miles away. Went to college, went in on an accounting major, and realized real quick I did not want to sit in a cubicle or an office my whole life. So I was looking for something kind of outside or something a little bit out of the normal. And I was home that summer from college, and my dad said, why don't you take the fire department exam? He was a firefighter in Dallas at that time. And I just said, well, how do I do that? So I went and took it. I did really, really well on the test and was hired 4 months later. And I knew that the second day I was in the fire academy, I knew I had found the right spot. It was just a good fit. I had a lot of big aspirations early on in my career, but those kind of changed through some life events. I'm married, got a wife of this summer will be 37 years. We've got 2 children and 5 grandchildren. As of 2 weeks ago, our 5th grandchild was here. But
oh my gosh, congratulations there during COVID. Golly, that stinks.
It was a little bit interesting, but they were able to work through it, and with God's grace, everything worked out well for them, and they're at home doing well, and his little sisters are just doting all over him. So it's been a good month. Outside of the fact that, like you alluded to earlier, I felt like I would have been on the East Coast at this point right now. My wife had already prepared for me to be gone for a month, so that didn't quite happen, but that's okay. But I'm really just a small town guy that fell into a job that I just absolutely loved. Nothing against anybody else, but I felt like I had the best job in the world. For me, it was exactly where I should have been, and I just love what I do.
So wait a minute. You said your dad was a firefighter, but yet you went to college for the purpose of accounting. How did you go this way, and then why all of a sudden back? Was it kind of like, whatever dad wants me to do, I'm going to do something different, or what?
Well, I grew up, my family, I had a great family. You always hear a lot of people talk about having, tough childhood. So I didn't have a tough childhood. I mean, I got the proverbial spanking every now and then, but I had a mom and dad that I respected very, very much. My dad was a military guy. He was active Army for a while, and then Texas National Guard. He retired at E9 as Command Sergeant Major. He was a firefighter for 31 years in Dallas. And the other thing was, after he retired from Dallas Fire Department, he actually got into the law enforcement side as a Kaufman County Fire Marshal. So he kind of hit law enforcement, police, military, everything that Carry the Load is about. Just had a lot of respect for him. And whenever I went and took the test for the job, it was just something that he had recommended. I'd always respected his advice. He never really led me astray. Sometimes he led me strictly to some bad places, but this was one of those. I just knew he had been there before. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know what the Brotherhood of the Fire Service was about. We had been about his fire station off and on up through the years, but I really didn't know the spirit of that Brotherhood of the Fire Service. So once I got in there and got into the academy, I could see that I landed right where I was supposed to. I don't know if that was a good call on my dad's part or not, or just luck, but I'm glad he recommended it.
And I mean, that's great to hear you say that, that you grew up in a good house. I mean, you're right. There are so many people, especially within our community, that don't have the ability to say that. I'm like you. I'm very fortunate, and I know that. If anything, I feel guilty that I haven't done as much with what I've been given as I feel I could. So it's nice to hear you say that and own up to, hey, I had a good childhood. I can't argue with it. But what branch of the service was your dad in?
In the Army.
He was in the Army. And if you said this, I didn't pick up on it. How old were you when he got out? Were you ever around him when he was served?
When I was born, he was actually in Fort Polk, Louisiana, preparing for the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that was an interesting time. He got very short leave. I think he was home 2 days. I was born, and then he went right back. But yes, I remember he had gotten out of the Army and was in the Texas National Guard, and he was assigned to the unit, I think the 144th Mechanized Division here in Terrell. And I remember a lot of times. Matter of fact, one year I actually went to summer camp with him, and we worked in the officers' mess and shined boots for a little bit of spending money. So that was kind of what my life was like growing up. But yes, he was a Command Sergeant Major, and I didn't really understood what that meant. I knew he was very well respected in his communities, but once he retired from that area, and then we got to working together in the fire service, I kind of found out what that meant, and kind of added a little bit more respect for myself towards him.
Well, there are probably some people watching this, if they're not really familiar with Carry the Load, they're probably watching this saying, hey, I thought Carry the Load was pretty much about the military. So why do you have this firefighter on there? I mean, I understand that he's got a connection to the military through his dad, but I think I'm going to speak real quickly on behalf of the fire department and law enforcement and first responders. And I think, one of our founders, Clint Bruce, always said it very well, and that is, there is no way that as military men and women, there's no way we can go overseas and do the things we need to do on behalf of this country if we don't have guys like David Lindsay and the firemen that he serves with there to protect our families. We cannot in good conscience step away. So it's always to us been just a no-brainer to include the sacrifices that you and your brotherhood have gone through. It's been a no-brainer to include y'all. But has anyone given you any grief about that at any point, saying, hey, why is the fire department part of Memorial Day? That's a military holiday, or not holiday, but that's their thinking. So can you speak to that at all?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I think probably after we had been named nonprofit partners with the Krodle Foundation, probably our second year there, that was actually brought up to us. I think I had a Dallas Fire Department shirt on, and we were at our nonprofit table there, and somebody brought that up. Why would they include it? Well, it just so happened we had a military veteran standing right there, and he corrected that lady very quickly, and he said exactly what you just said. He said, we can't go and do what we do without knowing that our families are going to be safe at home. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of puffed my chest out because I didn't really know the answer to that. But when he said that, I thought, you know what, we've got a lot of shared things that we, experiences. We're looking out for that guy next to us. And I know that's how the military family is. When something goes south, whether it's a death or just anything, we step up just like the military guys do for our family. So I think there's a lot of commonality there. And that veteran that day kind of stepping up and telling them, that they feel comfortable going and fighting for this country as long as they know that the police and firemen have got their backs back here at home with their families. And that I couldn't put it in any other way that would put it in a better context than what he said.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I can tell you that it's not like we talk to people and say, okay, here's your standard answer, when this question is posed or when somebody brings this up. But I do feel that ever since 9/11, I feel that the two communities have come together and bonded in such a way that none of us ever, I was in before 9/11 and I was in after 9/11. And I can tell you that and I'm so proud of this organization, the way we've brought the two communities together. The bond was already there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we went out and we magnified it and said, hey, these two entities cannot coexist, or that they cannot exist without one another. So let's embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really, that's a neat story that you told. Hadn't heard that. As well as I know you, I hadn't heard that. So I'm really glad that I was able to throw you that softball.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So, Sid, tell me what 9/11 meant for you.
Well, one of the things that, I'll be real honest with you. I was at the fire station that day. I was at the number 37 fire station on Greenville Avenue. And to be honest with you, when we saw the first tower on fire, we knew what the guys were doing there. They were doing the same thing we would have done. They were going to put that fire out. At that time, we didn't know that it was a terrorist attack, but when I was standing in front of the TV when that second plane hit, and I thought to myself, this is not good. Then we heard about Pennsylvania, we heard about the Pentagon, and we started kind of putting two and two together. And I think the whole nation realized what kind of situation we were in. But one of the things that distinctly stands out in my mind was when the first tower fell. I had friends in New York. We had guys that had come down and taught training classes. I was there in '99. I met some guys at Engine One Company down by Madison Square Garden. And I'll be honest with you, and pardon my language, but the very first thing that came out of my mouth when that first tower was, we just lost a shitload of firemen. We knew, all the guys standing there at the station, we knew that there was guys in there just doing their job. And they gave their life for that. So, fast forward, after that event happened, all of us in Dallas and our Firefighters Association, we decided we would go up there and be there for those guys. And starting the week after 9/11, we sent firefighters to New York every single day for probably about 4 months. And I was there in November. And a lot of times, all we did was go to funerals, visit firehouses. Those guys were so appreciative. And but we just tried to let them know that we're there for them. We would try to do stuff, to help them out. But they were already at that point where they were wanting to get back to their normal, what they'd seen before, because so many of them had been down to the pile and they'd been digging for their brothers and sisters, and it was just tough on them, kind of handling something so tragic. And to lose 343 guys in one day, that it's hard for us to fathom here, because that would have wiped out an entire day of Dallas firemen. We're just a smaller department compared to New York. But one of the things that it did for us was, to this day, I feel like sometimes in the fire service, we get a little bit of unwarranted respect just for the fact that those guys did such an amazing job that day. There was there was so many tens of thousands of people in those offices that they got out, and we still lost 3,000 people, but it could have been such higher. And they got so many people out and got them away from what could have been such a even a more tragic event. But a lot of times we're
Uh-oh. David, I'm hoping that you're still talking, but I can't hear you. You kind of froze up. Huh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching, what may have happened was somebody unplugged his internet, because all of a sudden we lost David. So what I'm going to do is kind of talk a little bit about something he said that I think is very interesting. And he talked about he feels like they got undue respect as a result of what happened by the firefighters on 9/11 in New York. And I know what he means, because actually tomorrow night we have a guest on the program who is a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. His name is Woody Williams, and he received the Medal of Honor for actions on Iwo Jima. Not many of those gentlemen from that generation alive, especially Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. I know what David was talking about, because I feel like I get some of that respect as a former Marine. And I didn't do anything, but it was the generations that preceded us. It's some of these young men and women who are continuing to do things now that carry on that legacy. But that's, in my opinion, that's what brotherhood is all about. That's what camaraderie is all about. So I understand what David was saying, but we're all there prepared to do something like this when our ticket is pulled. The New York City firefighters, in David's example, they were there when they were called. I know he's going to, when he comes back with us, and hopefully he is able to join us again, he will be talking about Todd Krodle, who was one of their fellow firefighters who they lost in the line of duty. And Todd's ticket was called. He was there, and he did what he was supposed to do. And unfortunately, it did not work out in his favor for the longevity of life. So I want to make sure, Carissa, are we able to get David back on the line? Has he called in or anything?
He hasn't called in. I'm trying to email him right now.
Okay. So that means I have to sit here and fill airtime. And folks, if you are still watching me, then you are hard up for something to do, because David is an interesting guest. I am just the guy that asks questions and tries to fill in the gaps. I do want to talk a little bit while we're waiting on him about a couple of these people that I referenced earlier. And if you did not see it, we had we've got 3 individuals who we are honoring today as part of Carry the Load. One of those is Specialist Joseph Lancourt. He is from Ludington, Michigan, 21 years old. And where that really touches me is that, I've got a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, and to think that they would put themselves in a position to lay down their life for the country is pretty darn humbling and almost difficult to swallow. So again, I encourage everybody to go to carrytheload.org and find out about these true heroes. In the meantime, David has come back to us, and David, we probably lost about 75% of the viewers because I had to start talking and fill some airtime. So now we're back to you, and I want to remind you of where we left off so that you can finish. You talked about you don't feel that you guys have earned the respect that you're given because of what your brothers up in New York did. And what I was telling everybody is I think that's hogwash, because y'all were ready, but unfortunately their ticket was called. So David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excuse me. So obviously, I want to switch gears to David Lindsay. You know, the title of this program is Lessons from the Front, and you know, whether you're serving on the front lines in Afghanistan or Iraq or other wars, or you're serving on the front lines here at home, which I believe firefighters do. You've seen a lot. You've experienced a lot. Is there a moment that you experienced? Is there a story, you know, that you experienced that stays with you to this day, that you still reference either, you know, just internally, or that you give to others as a lesson by which they can improve their lives?
Well, where do we start? I don't know if I could narrow it down to one, but there's several that that kind of coincide with one another that kind of come to mind. And as I was growing up, I've got a brother that was in law enforcement. He developed cancer and had a brain tumor in 1993, and he passed away in 2000. And he and I were the two youngest, so we were really close. And it was just kind of it was a tough time for me personally, because we were so close. And but during that time, I kind of struggled with you know, what was next. I thought I could really do things to fix that, but kind of moving forward into my life in 2011, Todd Krodle was killed in a fire, which he was a cousin of mine, and that's who our foundation is named after. But I still remember being very calm during that time, and just knowing that the big man upstairs was working. He was trying to figure out a way for me. I felt like sometimes I had been an underachiever, and I wanted to do more. A lot of times I was able to put my volunteer efforts in different places. But when Todd passed away, I knew that there was going to be something bigger. But I also knew that I couldn't put any limitations on it. I couldn't put any constraints, and I just had to be available. So fast forward about 18 months later, Stan Wilson died in a fire in North Dallas. And I still remember we had a deputy chief at that time. He pulled all of us around the chief's car, and he says, guys, look, we've had a really bad day today, but we have to go back to work. And he prayed over us. And that was such a defining moment for me, because I remember sitting there making my mind up that day. And I just told myself, I'm going to get behind this entire fire department. I'm going to get behind all of these families that are suffering tragedies similar to what we went through with Todd. I'm not going to be out front. I'm not going to be the focal point, but I'm going to get behind all these families. I'm going to do whatever it takes for us to show people what we were shown during that time when our family member passed away. So that kind of little sequence of events was something that really, really touched the way I approach things now, and stuff that I want my life to be of that service, mainly because of the love that we were shown back to us as a family when we were at our lowest point.
But you already knew that, and I mean, I don't want to split hairs with you, but it's interesting that all of a sudden that stood out to you, because you said earlier you did the same exact thing up in New York. I mean, you guys went. I mean, you saw this tragedy. You knew these people. You had a connection to them in the very least, and you guys went up there just to be supportive. And I mean, obviously that means a lot to people. So you already knew it. Why was it so different though with Todd and Sam?
It was personal, especially with Todd. He was my family member. I would, as I was going through the Honor Guard Academy, I was on our Honor Guard in Dallas, and I went to a national academy to get certified and get trained as an Honor Guard member. And a lot of times when we were talking in that deal during our training that week, I would try to impart to those guys, I've been that guy that's had to sit on that front row as a family member and see what a family goes through in such a tragic time. Dying in a fire is it's one of those things like a military, getting killed in action. It's just something you don't foresee coming. You're prepared for it. You train for that. Most firefighters are willing to take that risk, but when it actually happens to you or your family, and you see how it affected everybody around me and the things that it did, and to see what people did for us, it was such a huge outpouring of love that there's just no way to explain it. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but to see that, I thought if I can just give back 1/10 of what we experienced, then it would be well worth it. And there's been so many areas that I've been able to help out the Krodle Foundation. I've been part of the Dallas Firefighters Association. I've been an honor guard member and on our critical incident stress management team. And a lot of those, I had done some of those things, but I think sometimes there was times I just did it because that was what we did as firemen. But now it's become personal, and it's been one of those things where if I hear about it, doesn't matter if it's the middle of the night or whatever, it's I'll get up and kind of check in and see what I can do.
You think it's harder being a firefighter or a firefighter's wife?
Oh, hands down, my wife. I wish she was here to agree with me, but you know, I was trained for all of that stuff. We were given a lot of good training through our academy and continuing education and phase training. So I knew the risks. I knew what I was in for. But my wife, she married into this. We were dating when I got on the fire department, but we married 2 years into my fire career. And it was one of those things that looking back on it, I probably could have done a lot of things different, because us as firemen, we're the big, strong guys. We take care of the problems of, doesn't matter if it's the richest guy in Dallas or the poorest guy living on the street, we can take care of those problems. And to be honest with you, I didn't talk to my wife for 30 years about a single run that I ever had. I didn't want to bring that into my house. I didn't want my kids to know about it, so I just didn't discuss it. But after Todd died, I found out she was a pretty good source and a pretty good soft spot to land. And I think our relationship even became better when I opened up to her and kind of expressed some of my concerns and some of the things that I was going through, you know, on the mental and emotional side. And being a firefighter's wife, it's got to be a lot tougher, in my opinion.
Well, I would agree for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, and you know, you talked about, you've mentioned Todd Krodle Foundation a couple of times, so I want to transition to that. I'm sorry if I just went off air. Hopefully I'll be back here in a minute. I want to transition to that a little bit because what I think is really important for people to understand, and I'm going to let you talk in detail about what Todd Krodle Foundation does, but you guys deal with pain and suffering on a regular basis. And a lot of people who are not familiar with the military or first responders, and they hear the term PTS, you know, they're thinking that PTS is a result of you know, something like in the line of fire in the military, or it's something where they watch someone pass away. And it can be so much more than that. And I know what you guys deal with. Y'all deal with a lot of PTS. You know, you deal with a lot of tragedy. I'll put it that way. Tell me what the Todd Krodle Foundation does as it relates to that and all of the other things.
Well, when you start talking about PTS, a lot of times what we're calling it in the fire service now is PTSI. I know it was called a disorder for a long time, but we're looking at it as an injury. And the International Association of Firefighters has built a Center for Excellence up in Maryland. And what they're doing is they're treating substance abuse, and they're also treating the PTS side of it. And one of the things that we've done, we've got some guys in Dallas that have been to that center, and we've helped get them there, because there's travel expenses, there's some things.
And by we, you mean the Todd Krodle Foundation?
Yes, the Todd Krodle Foundation. We take care of getting those guys there, and we work with some other agencies to get them there. The Dallas Firefighters Association has been real good about doing that with us in partners, and we get those guys there and try to get them better. And lucky for us, we've got several success stories of those guys coming back from that. And plus, we've got several other places in this area that also treat PTS, and one of those things that we use them through our peer support guys inside the Dallas Fire Department. But to get into a lot of the other things that the Krodle Foundation does, when we first started, you know, Todd had an education. He was wanting to be a teacher before he got on the fire service, and I think he found out what teachers' salaries were, and then he called me and he said, "Hey, firefighter." So He
Is it that much of a raise to go from being a teacher to a firefighter?
I think it was back then. That was back in '93, so it was. I think it was pretty dramatic for him, and especially when you look. So, but we originally wanted to focus on education, and we wanted to focus on giving back, and we originally had talked about just doing scholarships. But when we sat in our first couple of formation meetings, we wanted to do so much more. Like I told you earlier, we just wanted to give that love back that we had been given to us as a family. And so when our board was founded, we wanted to look into what we could do for other line of duty death families. And we've been able to do that on just about every single one that has come through the fire department since Todd passed away. We wanted to look at what we could do for firefighters that were critically injured. You go back to several of them we've had get burned and have been off work for a long time. We've been able to step in and help them. And there's been a lot of times guys who just had injuries around the fire station and different kind of things that we've been able just to kind of to fill a little bit of a gap there. And the last thing we wanted to do is when we formed is we wanted to just be available for anything that come up inside the fire department. We didn't want to limit ourselves. We wanted to be available because that was the way we felt when the week that Todd died. And so there's been a lot of things. We've had some guys that have died of cancer. We've done fundraisers to pay for their funerals. We just had a guy that got kind of stomped by a bull here a couple of weeks ago. We were able to raise some.
I'm sorry, you said stomped by a bull?
He was stomped by a bull. He was in his pasture and off duty, and just with all the COVID stuff, they were going to have to send him home. He couldn't do his rehab. He needs some surgery, but they've got to wait. So we just put some money and some funds together to help him out and to get him back home and to be able to function until they were able to get back some kind of normal without this COVID virus going on. So as you can see, we just don't really limit ourselves. There's been a lot of times that we have done things that we just don't think are normal. But we're firefighters. We run into burning buildings for a living, so we don't think we're very normal anyway. So a lot of the things that we do, we're just willing to accept whatever is going on. We've been able to help some of our firefighters that have had PTS and stuff like that. We've been able to help them with marital counseling or some of the counseling like we mentioned earlier. So we try to be available. We try to keep our eyes and our ears open and listen to what's going on in our brothers' lives. And that's the main thing that we want to do, because I will guarantee you, if you ever go to a firefighter's funeral, there are people that come nationwide, and we do the same thing here in Dallas. And I will tell you that when Todd died, I looked up the night of visitation, and there was an FDNY uniform that passed through the visiting line, and he said, "We remembered when you guys came to see us." So,
oh my gosh,
that's kind of what the brotherhood is about, and we just want to continue that. And another thing that we're trying to do as a foundation is we want the younger guys coming into the fire department to understand Todd's legacy. And part of what that is the tradition of taking care of each other in the fire service. And whether it means just being there when your brother's struggling at work, or if it's being there for their family when something's going on that they didn't see coming. So we just want to be there like everybody was for us.
So you have you've had a heck of a life of service. I mean, you've retired from the fire department. You're still very actively involved in the Todd Krodle Foundation. You've been very involved with us at Carry the Load. What do you say to somebody who's watching this, who has never really, that bug to serve has never really gotten to them? I mean, as an example, I hear people all the time, when we get into conversations, "Oh, you were in the Marine Corps? God, that's one of my regrets. I wish I had done that." What do you say to people? Because I know you hear that as well, when they say, "I wish I had done what you did."
I say, what are you waiting on? I'm a perfect example. When Todd died, I kicked it into high gear. Yeah, I volunteered with the Boy Scouts. I did some things in our community here in Terrell. I volunteered at a school, just went in and ran copies and ran the laminator and stuff like that. But when Todd died, I felt like I just hit another gear. And whenever somebody says that to me, I go, "What are you waiting on?" you know, and there's a little scripture in the Bible. It's Isaiah 6:8, and that's kind of my motto or my creed that I live by now. And if you ever go back and look at that Isaiah 6:8, it says, "And the Lord said, who shall I send? Who amongst us will go?" And I said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." So I just say, what are you waiting on? There's opportunities out there every day for us to serve. We just have to step in and do it. I don't want to steal Nike's motto, but just do it.
No, I love that. I mean, I've heard that put a couple of different ways, but I like your call to action. What are you waiting on?
Right.
You know, that is great. David, thank you very much. I really, really enjoyed the time. As always, you are just a joy to talk to. You have an unbelievable operation. Your team is awesome. And, you know, you guys being the representatives of the fire department, honestly, and I mean this with a lot of sincerity, it gives me a lot of comfort knowing the quality of people that we have in the fire department.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate Carry the Load's trust in us to carry out that mission. You know, several years ago, I was up on the East Coast Relay, and I saw in more detail what Carry the Load does, and I'm sold out. That y'all's mission is right on track. It's what it should be, and whatever we can do to help not only our firefighter family, our law enforcement, or our military guys, I think it's just something that anybody can grab a hold of. And Todd, last year you said something on a video when I was in the Diamondback Stadium doing a rally on the West Coast Relay, and you told people you can be the one to carry that flag. And it goes back to what I just said. What are you waiting on? You can be the one to carry that flag, and it doesn't matter what form it looks like, but you can be the one. And I'm a firm believer in that.
David, thank you. Again, absolute joy. And for those of you watching, you know, feel free to reach out to Carry the Load in regard to David Lindsay if his organization could be of any assistance. And thank you to the Todd Krodle Foundation for being such wonderful partners. Tomorrow night we've got a great guest as well. As I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient Woody Williams is going to be our guest. And for those of you unfamiliar with him, he is a Medal of Honor recipient due to actions on Iwo Jima. And Iwo Jima is one of the hallmarks of the Marine Corps. And so we get to talk to an unbelievable American icon. This next week, we've got quite a few more folks like David who I think you're going to want to tune in and talk to. It's going to be a good one. So again, David, thank you very much. Thanks for being our guest. For everyone out there, on behalf of Carry the Load, thank you very much for your participation. Help us remind everyone of the true meaning of Memorial Day, because without you, this movement comes to a halt. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, David.
Thanks, sir.